The Mask of Life, a powerful artifact central to the Matoran Universe's survival, has vanished into the ocean depths. The Toa Inika, despite their unwavering determination, failed to secure it, leaving the Great Spirit Mata Nui's life hanging by a thread. Ancient warlords, the Barraki, long believed to be myths, have emerged from the depths, staking their claim on the Mask of Life. To make matters worse, Makuta Teridax has returned, pursuing his own sinister objectives. But before we dive into the next thrilling chapter of the quest for the Mask of Life, it's time to take a step back. Things are about to get intense, and the lore of Bionicle will become ever more confusing. To truly appreciate and understand what's coming, we need some context. In today's special interlude episode, we journey tens of thousands of years back in time, into the deep history of the Matoran Universe. We'll witness Mata Nui's attempts to bring order to creation, the rise of the Barraki and their quest for power, and the gradual descent of the Makuta into utter darkness. This is a tale of ancient wars, grand betrayals, and the fall of mighty heroes. Around 100,000 years before the events of the main saga, long before the shadow of rebellion cast by the Makuta fell upon the Matoran Universe, there existed an era of peace, creation, and fragile order. This was a time when the Great Spirit Mata Nui and his creators, the Great Beings, sought to impose harmony across the cosmos. Yet, even in this age of light, dangers lingered in the shadows. It is important to note that the Great Beings, for all their incredible intellect and technological mastery, were far from infallible. They were not gods, but extraordinarily advanced scientists and engineers, and many of their creations bore the marks of trial and error. Among their greatest failures were beings that went rogue or developed unintended dangerous traits. One such creation was the Zyglak. These monstrous creatures were the byproduct of an accident during the Great Being's development of the Krana. They were aggressive, highly intelligent, and harbored an intense hatred for the Matoran. To protect the Matoran from these threats, the Great Beings brought into existence the first Toa. The first was Helryx, a Toa of water, a being of immense power who will become very important later on in our story. The second was Ord, a Toa of psionics, who was tasked with using his psychic powers to calm down the Zyglak. Unfortunately, he failed and actually made the Zyglak even more aggressive. Initially, Toa Helryx and other powerful ancient beings like Axon were organized into the Hand of Artaka, a powerful but brutal group with a terrible reputation. But the Hand of Artaka were only ever meant to be the temporary protectors of the early universe. The Great Beings had also instilled innate Toa powers into the Matoran. As more Toa appeared, they gradually replaced the Hand of Artaka, and soon the first Toa team was created, the Toa Kordak. This valiant team included Toa Lesovic, a Toa of air, and 8 others, led by the fearless Nicola, a female Toa of lightning. Tragically, the Toa Kordak's legacy was cut short. While on a mission, the team encountered the dreaded Zyglak. During a critical moment in the battle, Lesovic hesitated, and this brief lapse led to the deaths of his entire team. While grieving the loss of his team, he discovered another terrible truth. The village of Matoran he had sworn to protect had been sent to the nightmarish realm of Kozani, a place of suffering and torment, due to the Taraga's descent into madness. Perhaps due to the early failures of the Toa in maintaining universal stability, Helryx, the first Toa of water and a founding member of the Hand of Artaka, recognized the need for a more decisive and clandestine force. While the Toa embodied the ideals of heroism and protection, their methods were often limited by their adherence to moral codes and the expectation of transparency. Helryx envisioned a new organization, one that would act from the shadows, employing the brutal efficiency the Hand of Artaka once wielded, but without its recklessness. This new group would operate with absolute secrecy, wielding power without public acknowledgement and carrying out missions that the Toa, bound by their principles, could not. Drawing on her experience, Helryx recruited former members of the disbanded Hand of Artaka, individuals hardened by their past but willing to dedicate themselves to a higher purpose. However, Helryx made one critical decision. No Toa would be allowed to join. She believed their innate sense of duty to the Matoran and their reluctance to cross certain moral lines would conflict with the Order's objectives. This organization, she declared, would be loyal only to Mata Nui and would do whatever was necessary to preserve the universe, no matter the cost. Despite the creation of the Toa and the Order of Mata Nui, the Great Spirit himself desired more than mere peacekeepers. He sought to instill order on a grander scale. To this end, he created 6 extraordinary beings, each embodying leadership, strength, and intellect in their purest forms. These beings were paragons of perfection, so radiant in their power and beauty that they made even the noble Toa appear as though they were Rahi born of mutation. Their names were Pridak, Kalma, Takadox, Elek, Karapar, and Mantax, 6 figures destined to be raised above all others. They were blessed with power and authority beyond measure, entrusted with the sacred task of bringing unity and peace to the universe. From this divine purpose, their legend as the Barraki, a Matoran term meaning warlords, was born. 1,000 years into their reign, Pridak proposed an alliance that would unite their separate kingdoms into a single, unstoppable force. Takadox, ever the opportunist, was the first to pledge his loyalty to this new order. Slowly, the others followed, and thus was born the League of 6 Kingdoms, a coalition of power that sought to bring the entire universe under their rule. Towering fortresses were erected in their names, and their armies swelled. They saw themselves as gods among mortals, their reign ordained by Mata Nui himself. Around 87,000 years ago, the Barraki forced an alliance with a secretive organization whose sole purpose was the creation of Rahi, led by a powerful dragon-like ruler named Miserix. 100 members of this enigmatic group had been created by Mata Nui from a substance known as antidermis. They had spent 13,000 years in the shadows, quietly fulfilling their duty of designing and releasing creatures across the universe. The Barraki, growing ever more malevolent and power-hungry, were not content to let this organization remain neutral. With their vast armies, indomitable will, and the authority granted to them by Mata Nui himself, they coerced the group into creating War Rahi, dangerous beasts crafted for destruction rather than harmony. Miserix was highly distrustful of the League of 6 Kingdoms, commanding his right-hand man, the hero of this chapter, to keep a close watch over them. Miserix's lieutenant was a being of unmatched intellect and ambition. Unknown even to himself, this being had been uniquely programmed by the great beings, the architects of the Matoran Universe. His destiny was to one day, in the far future, assume control of the universe from Mata Nui, while Mata Nui moved on to control a new universe. Together, these two beings were meant to fulfill a grand, higher purpose, one still shrouded in mystery and beyond the understanding of even the wisest inhabitants of their world. But this destiny bestowed upon him by the great beings remained hidden from him, as did the cosmic plan behind it. This lieutenant devoted himself entirely to the service of Mata Nui, whom he regarded as a brother. In his loyalty, he worked to protect the Matoran of Metru Nui from harm and created beautiful creatures to honor the Great Spirit. This group was of course the Brotherhood of Makuta, and the lieutenant, the being predestined to shape the fate of the universe, was Makuta Teridax. At this time, however, the Brotherhood's story was one of creation, loyalty, and quiet observation, before shadows fell over their name and changed their purpose forever. "80,000 years ago, the League of 6 Kingdoms reached the zenith of its power. But control of the 6 Kingdoms was not enough. Under the command of Pridak and his allies, the League became blinded by arrogance and a lust for power. They sought to claim ultimate dominion over the entire universe, wresting ultimate power away from Mata Nui himself. After 20 years of slaughter, the Barraki forces reached the heart of the Matoran Universe, Metru Nui. From his island fortress, Pridak surveyed his army, an amalgamation of the outcasts and criminals of the universe. Brutal mercenaries and displaced beings of every creed filled his ranks. The other Barraki had similarly mobilized their forces, and together they stood poised to strike and claim the title of Great Spirit from Mata Nui. To the west, Takadox and Mantax's troops prepared their positions. In the east, Kalmar and Elek's forces braced for the coming battle, their warriors sharpening their skills in skirmishes amongst themselves. these minor conflicts were of little concern to Prydak. He relished the sight of his legions preparing for war, knowing their ferocity would soon be turned outward. From atop his fortress, he observed his legions, but his gaze sharpened at the sight of two guards neglecting their duties. Summoning his battlemaster, Prydak commanded both the execution of the slacking guards and the battlemaster himself for their failure. Knowing defiance would mean a more agonizing death, the battlemaster obeyed, delivering the order for his own destruction. Prydak watched the grim scene unfold with cold satisfaction, reaffirming his dominance through fear. Prydak and the other Barraki convened in the central chamber of his fortress, studying rough-hewn maps carved into stone tablets. The plan was audacious, relying on overwhelming force to crush any resistance. As the Barraki debated, Prydak's attention remained fixed on the horizon. Victory was tantalizingly close. Yet even as he exuded confidence, a sense of unease crept into the edges of his mind. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the Barraki's forces were suddenly attacked. A massive army descended upon the island from the north, bearing the banner of the heroic protectors of Mata Nui, the Brotherhood of Makuta. The invaders included thousands of Toa, Rakshi, Exo-Toa, Visarak, and Rahi beasts, their numbers overwhelming. Taken by surprise, the League's legions faltered under the onslaught. The Brotherhood had timed their assault perfectly. They struck with precision, exploiting the League's lack of discipline and unity. Prydak's forces, though formidable, were no match for the Brotherhood's coordinated attack. Across the battlefield, chaos reigned. Warriors deserted, lines crumbled, and the Barraki's once mighty army began to disintegrate. From his vantage point, Prydak watched the carnage unfold. The sight of the Brotherhood's banner filled him with rage. It was clear that one among the Barraki must have betrayed their plans to the Brotherhood. Yet he knew that anger or contemplating upon who the traitor might be would not turn the tide. Rallying the remaining troops, the Barraki attempted to mount a defense, but it was too late. By nightfall, the battle was over, and the League's dream of domination and the overthrow of Mata Nui lay in ruins. Defeated and bound in chains, the 6 warlords were dragged before the mastermind of the Barraki's defeat. Their captor was none other than Makuta Teridax. Prydak, ever defiant, met the Makuta's gaze with unyielding intensity. For a fleeting moment, his piercing stare seemed to cut through the shroud of shadow and power surrounding Teridax, unsettling even the towering Makuta. Makuta declared their rebellion crushed and their ambition foolish. Takadox, ever the manipulator, attempted to bargain for their lives, offering the League's forces as allies to the Brotherhood. His plea was met with scorn. Makuta struck him down with a single, armored blow, silencing his treachery for the moment. Teridax's loyalty to the Great Spirit Mata Nui unbroken. The sentence was clear: death. Yet, before the order could be carried out, a new force entered the fray. Botar, the fearsome enforcer of the Order of Mata Nui, teleported into the room. Towering and grotesque, Botar declared that the Barraki's punishment lay not in death, but in imprisonment. He would take them to the pit, a prison of unimaginable suffering, designed for the universe's most dangerous criminals. Despite Teridax's protests and his attempts to assert control, Botar's authority was unchallengeable. In the blink of an eye, they vanished. The Barraki had been spirited away to the pit, disappearing from Teridax's grasp. In the wake of their defeat, the Barraki's empires crumbled. Their legions were scattered, their fortresses razed, and their names erased from history. Only in the Brotherhood's secret records did the tale of their rebellion remain. The fate of the 6 warlords became an enduring mystery, even among the ranks of the Brotherhood of Makuta. Yet their memory lingered, striking a unique chord within Teridax, a mixture of unease and dark fascination. The sheer audacity of the Barraki's goal, their dream of dethroning Mata Nui, had, up until that point, been unthinkable. Their plan had been as reckless as it was bold, and Teridax dismissed their failure as inevitable. Yet, as he reflected on their ambition, a darker notion began to creep into his thoughts. Was the Great Spirit truly beyond overthrow? Or had the Barraki simply fallen short in their vision and strength to accomplish it? And with this fixation growing in his mind, the seeds of Teridax's descent into darkness were sown. It was here, in the shadow of the Barraki's failed rebellion, that the first flickers of his grand and terrible ambitions began to take shape. Only a few years after the defeat of the Barraki, Teridax was needed as a savior once more. Mata Nui, the heart of the Matoran Universe, became a battleground as simmering disputes between its inhabitants erupted into full-scale war. The conflict, which began as minor disagreements between the industrious Po-Matoran and the fiery Tar-Matoran, escalated into a catastrophic civil war. The Po-Matoran, angered by perceived trade inequities, sank several transport barges belonging to the Tar-Matoran. In retaliation, the Tar-Matoran unleashed molten protodermis upon a Po-Mitri warehouse, igniting hostilities that quickly spread throughout the city. What followed was a dark chapter in Mata Nui's history. The Matoran, consumed by war for 400 years, abandoned their roles as cogs in the city's grand machine. As the city teetered on the brink of collapse, Miserix, leader of the Brotherhood of Makuta, issued an order to his trusted lieutenant, Teridax: restore order in Mata Nui by any means necessary. Luring a significant number of Matoran combatants into the sprawling archives, he sealed the entrances and released the facility's dangerous Rahi upon them. The resulting slaughter brought the war to an abrupt end, but at a grave cost. While the violence ceased, the massacre left a dark stain on the Brotherhood's reputation, which was feared rather than revered. Mata Nui himself was gravely weakened, his vitality sapped by the discord within his creation. As explored briefly in the last chronicle, a team of Toa, led by Javan, was dispatched on a desperate mission to find the Mask of Life, using the mask to save the Great Spirit and avert disaster. In the aftermath of the Matoran Civil War, the Brotherhood of Makuta emerged from the shadows to claim a more prominent role in the governance of the Matoran Universe. Each Makuta was assigned to oversee a designated region, ensuring stability and order within their domains. Despite his outward adherence to the Brotherhood's mission, Teridax's thoughts began to wander into dangerous territory yet again. Having saved Mata Nui's life twice in a short period, first by stopping the armies of the Barraki, and then by halting the Matoran Civil War, Teridax started to question the Great Spirit's competence. To him, Mata Nui appeared distant, preoccupied with cosmic matters, and incapable of maintaining order in his universe. It was the Makuta who had created the Rahi, the creatures that enriched the Matoran universe with their diversity and purpose. And it was the Makuta who imposed order when chaos threatened to tear the world apart. Why then should the Matoran worship Mata Nui, a distant and seemingly ineffectual deity, when the Makuta had proven their strength and utility? Teridax's growing frustration gave rise to an ambitious idea: overthrow Mata Nui and establish the Brotherhood of Makuta as the true rulers of the Matoran universe. It is also worth noting that Teridax's obsession with overthrowing Mata Nui may not have been entirely of his own making. As previously explained, the Great Beings designed Teridax with a specific purpose in mind: that he would one day assume control of the Matoran universe, working alongside Mata Nui to fulfill a grand and mysterious cosmic plan. It is plausible that this latent directive, buried deep within his being, subtly influenced his thoughts and nudged him toward a path of universal domination, albeit not in the way the Great Beings had anticipated. Regardless of the origins of this treacherous notion, the means to accomplish such an extraordinary and perilous undertaking remained, for the time being, beyond his grasp. As the Brotherhood of Makuta consolidated its power and influence after the Matoran Civil War, ancient whispers of a being older than Mata Nui began to circulate among their ranks. Known as Tren Krom, he was a figure shrouded in myth and fear, dismissed by many as a mere legend, but regarded with quiet dread by those who dared to believe in his existence. Long before the Great Spirit Mata Nui was activated, Tren Krom was created to act as the temporary overseer of the Matoran Universe, controlling its vast systems and maintaining its delicate balance, while the Great Beings completed their designs. Once Mata Nui was brought into being, Tren Krom's role came to an abrupt end. The Great Beings, fearing his immense power, sealed him away on a remote island. Tren Krom's appearance, described in hushed tones by the few who claimed to have seen him, was enough to drive lesser beings to madness. His scarlet, gelatinous body was covered in hooked tentacles, his skull featureless save for two hollow eyes that seemed to pierce into the soul. Mutran, one of the most brilliant and twisted minds among the Makuta, was chosen to undertake the perilous task of scouting out Tren Krom. His mission was to travel to Tren Krom's island and ascertain whether the ancient being remained a threat. Upon reaching the desolate island, Mutran found himself face to face with the horrifying legend. Tren Krom wasted no time in asserting his dominance. Using his vast telepathic abilities, the ancient being merged his mind with Mutran's, delving deep into the Makuta's thoughts. Through this mental connection, Mutran learned not only the nature of Tren Krom, but also the intricate workings of the universe itself. Tren Krom imparted knowledge about the Matoran Universe's systems, its true purpose, and the great being's ultimate designs. When the connection ended, Mutran fell unconscious, overwhelmed by the flood of knowledge. Armed with the knowledge gained from Tren Krom, Mutran unveiled the very means by which Mata Nui could be overthrown. When Mutran presented this information to Teridax, the latter said little, listening intently without betraying his thoughts. The following day, Teridax called for a convocation of the Makuta. Standing before his brethren, he laid out the true nature of the universe, its vulnerabilities, and his grand plan: the overthrow of Mata Nui and the Brotherhood's ascension to supremacy over the Matoran Universe. Miserix, still the leader of the Brotherhood at the time, was appalled. Suspicious of Teridax's ambition, he lashed out, challenging Teridax in combat. The ensuing battle was fierce, but Teridax, bolstered by the support of most of the Makuta, emerged victorious. He ordered Krika and Spira to eliminate Miserix, ensuring there would be no rival to his authority. However, Krika took pity upon his old friend, and instead imprisoned him on a remote island, lying to Teridax that he was now dead. Any Makuta loyal to Miserix were hunted down by Icarax and Gorast, cementing Teridax's total control over the Brotherhood. As the Brotherhood embarked on their grand plan to usurp control of the universe, they underwent a transformation that would forever define them. To fully embrace their roles as agents of shadow, the Makuta purged all remaining light from within themselves. At some point, the Makuta evolved from biomechanical beings into ghost-like entities of antidermis, a gaseous substance that rendered them incorporeal. This transformation necessitated new vessels to house their ethereal forms, leading them to commission armor crafted by the Ninra Ghosts, a shadowy group of Matoran weaponsmiths whose skills were unparalleled. Their transformation into beings of shadow and antidermis symbolized their total commitment to their new goal. But their ambition would require time, patience, and careful manipulation of events within the Matoran Universe. For tens of thousands of years, the Makuta maintained their reputation as benevolent protectors of the Matoran Universe. Despite their careful deceptions, the Brotherhood's actions did not go unnoticed. Around 60,000 years before the present time, the Order of Mata Nui began to suspect the Brotherhood's corruption. The Order were aware of the Makuta's greatest vulnerability, Matoran of Light. These beings, whose light-based essence posed a direct threat to the Makuta's shadowy existence, could become targets of Brotherhood aggression. To protect them, the Order turned to Mata Nui himself for intervention. In response to the Order's pleas, Mata Nui enacted an extraordinary measure. He wiped 6 months of memories from every being in the Matoran Universe, including the Makuta. During this temporal void, the Order worked in secrecy, scattering Matoran across the universe and disguising them as Matoran of other elements. These efforts included disguising Takua, a Matoran of Light who would one day become the legendary Takanuva, as a Matoran of Fire. This subterfuge was intended to ensure the survival of the Matoran and, by extension, the future creation of a Torah of Light, a being critical to countering the Makuta's growing threat if it were ever needed. While the Order succeeded in hiding the Matoran and wiping their memories, their efforts could not protect other elemental Matoran. The Makuta, aware of the potential threats certain elements posed, initiated a covert campaign of genocide. Matoran of Iron and Magnetism, whose natural abilities made them potential adversaries to the Brotherhood, were systematically hunted down and exterminated. Not long after, the Makuta began to subtly reposition themselves. Though they publicly continued their role as guardians, they deliberately stepped back from active involvement, allowing events to unfold in ways that furthered their ultimate goal. Despite their disdain for the Toa, whom they viewed as naive and far weaker than themselves, the Makuta recruited select Toa to serve directly under them. This culminated in the creation of the Toa Hagar, elite Toa teams chosen for their exceptional deeds and courage. Once chosen, they were adorned with armor made from precious metals, symbolizing their elevated status, and were gifted Kanohi masks shaped in honor of past heroes. For millennia, the Toa Hagar served faithfully, tackling threats such as the rampaging Forok and brutal Frostelis attacks. Their victories elevated the Makuta's public image, making the Brotherhood seem like benevolent leaders who inspired loyalty and trust. But really, the Toa Hagar were pawns, unwittingly concealing the growing corruption within the Brotherhood. However, not all Toa trusted the Makuta. Suspicion about the Brotherhood's true motives led to the creation of the Makoki Stone, a carefully guarded artifact inscribed with detailed information about the Makuta. Its carvings included the identities of the Brotherhood's members, the locations of their fortresses, and other crucial intelligence. The stone was entrusted to a Toa fortress, where a team of Toa dedicated themselves to safeguarding it. But roughly 7,000 years ago, the Dark Hunters devised a plan to steal the Makoki Stone. While the fortress came under siege by Frostelis, a team of Dark Hunters, including Hakan and Vezok, infiltrated the stronghold, claiming the Makoki Stone for the Dark Hunters. Later, the Shadowed One would smash the Makoki Stone into 6 pieces, selling it to the Brotherhood, who wished to conceal their vulnerabilities from the Toa. However, this was only the beginning of the clashes between the Toa and Dark Hunters. Roughly 3,000 years before the present, the Matoran Universe saw the outbreak of the Toa Dark Hunter War, a war the Makuta were conspicuously absent from. The conflict began when the future Piraka, Vezok, Avak, and Redak freed the Kanohi dragon, which wreaked havoc in Mata Nui. They used the chaos to offer their protection to Turaga Dume, but he refused, leading to a month-long battle where the Toa Mangai, led by Lekan and Nadiki, defeated the dragon and shipped it to Zia, where it was welcomed by their leader, Rudaka. The Shadowed One, undeterred, escalated his efforts, attempting to kidnap Doom and eventually launching a full-scale invasion. Initially, the Toa Mangai, outnumbered and overwhelmed, barricaded themselves in the Colosseum. Toa Naho managed to escape the siege, returning with nearly 100 Toa reinforcements, shifting the tide of the war. Fierce battles followed, and ultimately, the Shadowed One's forces were driven out, their plans in ruins. However, the war was not without its share of treachery. Tuyet, one of the most enigmatic figures among the Toa, secretly possessed the Nui Stone, a mysterious and powerful artifact capable of absorbing the powers of other Toa and greatly amplifying the abilities of its wielder. The allure of its immense power consumed Tuyet, corrupting her sense of justice and duty. The Dark Hunters, aware of the stone's existence, began to hunt Tuyet in their relentless pursuit of power. But Tuyet, driven mad by the Nui Stone's power, took her corruption a step further. She began killing Matoran, blaming the Dark Hunters for the murders in an effort to manipulate her fellow Toa into continuing the war against their shared enemy. Likan and Nadiki eventually uncovered Tuyet's horrifying deeds. Confronting her, Likan destroyed the Nui Stone in a desperate battle. However, fragments of the stone embedded themselves in Tuyet's armor during the encounter, leaving her with lingering powers that made her a formidable threat even after her defeat. But Tuyet's story did not end there. Overnight, she mysteriously disappeared from her cell, her whereabouts unknown. Not long after, another betrayal shook the foundations of the Toa Mangai. Nadiki, lured by promises of power from the Shadowed One's Lieutenant Lariska, betrayed his fellow Toa. His treachery was uncovered by Likan, who staged an ambush that ended the war. Nadiki was banished along with the defeated Dark Hunters, but his punishment was far from over. The treacherous Rudaka, working for the Shadowed One, mutated Nadiki into the grotesque insectoid form seen later in Mata Nui's history. Interestingly though, throughout the war, the Makuta, self-proclaimed protectors of the universe, remained conspicuously uninvolved. While the Makuta employed the Honorable Toa Haga to uphold their image, behind the scenes they had secretly allied with the Dark Hunters, ensuring the conflict dragged on. By manipulating both sides, the Makuta used the chaos to their advantage, diverting attention away from their true intentions. Furthermore, the prolonged war weakened the Toa immensely, whose numbers dwindled significantly. This left the Matoran vulnerable, subtly paving the way for the Makuta's ultimate plan. The Brotherhood of Makuta's growing corruption became undeniable during a sequence of events surrounding the theft of the Mask of Light. Approximately 2,500 years ago, Makuta Kojal was tasked with stealing the mask from Artaka's island. Although Teridax ordered the mission to be subtle, Kojal launched a full-scale invasion, deploying armies of Rakshi, Exo-Toa, and Visorak. Kojal entered the fortress and, despite Artaka's defenses, escaped with the Mask of Light. However, Kojal's disregard for Teridax's orders exposed the Brotherhood's involvement in the heist, undermining their deniability. The Order of Mata Nui responded swiftly and decisively. All beings involved in the raid, including Kojal, were assassinated, and the Brotherhood lost all knowledge of Artaka's location, a significant blow to Teridax's plans. To make matters worse, this theft led to internal rebellion within the Brotherhood. The Toa Haga discovered the truth about the Mask of Light's theft and the Brotherhood's true nature. They learned of the Makuta's secret enslavement of Matoran, their alliance with the Dark Hunters, and the use of Visorak to invade entire islands. Led by Toa Norik, the Haga staged a daring raid on the Brotherhood's fortress on Destral. They penetrated the stronghold's defenses, battling Makuta Teridax himself. Though the Haga were successful in retrieving the Mask of Light and the Makoki stones, their rebellion came at great cost. Rudaka, now a servant of the Brotherhood, ambushed and captured 4 of the Haga, mutating them into Rahaga, grotesque parodies of their former selves. Norik and Iruni escaped Destral, but were later captured and mutated as well. Rudaka, believing the Rahaga no longer posed a threat, allowed them to live. Fearing similar uprisings among other Toa Haga teams, the Brotherhood preemptively eliminated several teams, with some Toa given to Kirox for experiments and others vanishing altogether. Following the theft of the Mask of Light from the Brotherhood, the relationship between the Makuta and the Dark Hunters deteriorated. Teridax demanded the execution of the Dark Hunters who had been guarding the base during the raid. However, the Shadowed One refused this demand, pulling his operatives from the Brotherhood's bases. This marked a turning point in the alliance between the two factions, with this animosity soon growing into all-out war. With the Brotherhood's alliances weakening and his plans under threat, Teridax accelerated his schemes. To ensure his vision of dominance over the universe, he targeted Mata Nui directly. Using a specialized virus, Teridax infected the Great Spirit. Over the next 300 years, the virus slowly took effect, eventually plunging Mata Nui into a deep sleep and triggering the Great Cataclysm, the monumental event that reshaped the Matoran Universe. As explored in earlier chapters, the Great Cataclysm caused widespread devastation, with domes collapsing, landmasses shifting, and countless lives upended. Yet, some of its most profound consequences lay beneath the surface, deep in the oceanic depths of the universe, in the inescapable prison known as the Pit. The Pit, a sprawling prison carved from an entire dome, was designed by the Order of Mata Nui to house the most dangerous and irredeemable beings in the Matoran Universe. Guarded by the skilled jailer Hydraxon and patrolled by the Maxilos robots, the Pit was a fortress of containment. Among its infamous prisoners were the Barraki, the once mighty warlords who had been defeated and exiled to this abyss long ago. When the Great Cataclysm struck, the Pit's structural integrity was shattered. Water flooded in, submerging the prison entirely and creating a hostile, mutagen-filled environment. The Barraki, alongside numerous other prisoners, seized this opportunity to escape. However, freedom came at a cost. The mutagenic waters of the sunken pit transformed the Barraki into monstrous, water-breathing mutants. With an army of Rahi at their command, the Barraki began rebuilding their strength, dreaming of the day they could reclaim their old air-breathing forms so they could reassert their power once more. For 300 years, the Barraki remained trapped in the depths, their underwater fortress a grim reminder of their fall from power. But 700 years ago, a cataclysmic event changed everything. A massive fragment of Voya Nui broke off and plummeted into the ocean, dragging an entire Matoran village with it. Miraculously, the Matoran survived, their descent cushioned by an airweed field that released hundreds of life-saving bubbles. These bubbles allowed them to establish the underwater city of Mata Nui, adapting to their new environment while resisting further mutation from the seawater. Mata Nui developed a unique underwater culture, with its leadership rotating monthly among its inhabitants. Fortunately for the Matoran, the Barraki leader forbade an attack on Mata Nui, seeing no advantage in it. But everything changed when the Mask of Life sank into the depths. To the Barraki, this artifact was no mere trinket. It was the key to reclaiming their past glory, exacting revenge on those who had defeated them, and reshaping the universe in their image. The stage is set for an epic clash beneath the waves. Join us in the next video where we will return to the saga of the Mask of Life. The stakes will rise higher than ever, and the sacrifices will echo across the universe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.